our colleagues from Japan and from the United States, because it's, well, some effort to attend that meeting depending on the time lag and so on. And of course, I will present that meeting right now. You see, the idea is to share experiences on flood management in France and Germany, and this while sharing experiences coming from, if I may say so, practitioners. In fact, in spite of the fact that the differences between practitioners and academic are not so big today. And in order to do this, we would like to compare flood risk management in Cologne, Köln auf Deutsch, and also in Paris, because both European cities were stricken by very big disasters, for example, in 1910 in Paris, and also more recently in Cologne, in Köln, as has been the case in 1993 and 1995. And in order to compare those case studies, two big institutions trying to prevent even more disasters, that's to say French Associations for Natural Disasters Prevention, AFPCN, l'Association Française de Prévention des Catastrophes Naturelles in French, and also in Germany, of course, we have German Committee for Disaster Reduction, Deutsches Komitee für Katastrophenvorsorge in German. And the idea, of course, is to see what is being done in order to prevent even more disasters related with floods in both cities, and especially while relying on 2 or 3 main questions we discussed before the meeting, of course, between French and German colleagues. Well, those questions could be as follows. For example, we have here what to do in order to prevent events that are associated with very low probabilities, so to say non-event according to, well, on a day-to-day basis, and what to do in order to prevent those disasters, in fact, in spite of the fact that those disasters are not well understood and not well acknowledged on a day-to-day basis. This could be the first question that could be addressed here. And also how participative governance is being promoted, implemented in Cologne and in Paris, and what to do in order to share, so to say, good practices that could be found in both cities. In order to address the point a bit more in particular, I would like to use 2 quotations, one coming from Jean-Pierre Dupuy. Catastrophe is due to happen, yet with low probability. You see, it's certain that something will happen, but the probability is very low. And consequently, if I may say so, I could use a second quotation coming from Kahneman in his book, Thinking Fast and Slow. The human mind does not know what to do with non-events, which looks like to be non-events, but in fact that will have to arise sooner or later. And in order to address more specifically those issues, we will have the big pleasure to hear Dr. Marlene WILLKOMM on the German side. She is Deputy Head of the Flood Protection Center at the Municipal Drainage Operation in Köln. And on the French side, we have a counterpart who is Régis THEPOT. Régis is Deputy Secretary General of French Association for Natural Disaster Risk Reduction, of course, but it benefits from, well, a long-standing experience in flood risk management in Paris, especially as concerns the upper watershed of River Seine. So, once again, I would like to thank very warmly Roland Nussbaum, AFPCN, and of course, even more our German partners for giving the opportunity to organize this meeting. And I will leave the floor to Marlene first, and then Régis. After that, of course, we will have to address some questions that may arise depending on the content of the presentation. So thanks a lot for attending once again. And once again, it's very, well, it's a pleasure to be here with you and to share ideas and even more good practices on those very, very relevant issues. So now I leave the floor to Marlene first. Marlene, don't forget the time devoted is 15 minutes if you can do it.
Okay, thank you very much, Patrick, for this introduction, and I try my best. So I will show you the presentation. So I hope you can see all the presentation. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present the flood protection and prevention in Cologne. I have some, I can hear me. Maybe there is a microphone on. Please, can you switch off the microphone?
Yes, to all participants, please turn off your microphones and camera so that we can focus on the speaker. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Now it's better. So the summary of my presentation is that I show you, I gave you a quick introduction. What is in German, the short name is STEP Köln. And then I will show you what is the flood protection along the riverside on the River Rhine. And then what we did and what we can do by the inhabitants of the city of Cologne and the public relation before doing a flood. And I think this is a task what we have to do everyone's, because that the thinking about this natural hazard is not is there, but mostly doing a flood and not between the flood. Here you see a map of Cologne, and we have 5 treatment plants in Cologne. So the first task and duties from the STEP Köln is the wastewater treatment plants and the drainage. The second one is the flood protection and prevention. And the third one is the management and development of the smaller streams and ponds. So we have a little bit of smaller streams in this area. There goes all in the River Rhine. Here you see that we were established in May 2001. So we have last month's birthday. So we are 20 now. We are a daughter of the city of Cologne, and we get these 3 tasks from the slide before from the city of Cologne, so that we look for all these water themes on a city area. Cologne have 1 million inhabitants. I said that we have these 5 wastewater treatment plants. Our sewage system has a length von 2,037 kilometers. We have 48 pumping stations and around 49,000 road gullies. Then we have 15 smaller streams, and from these we have 59 kilometers open reservoirs bodies, but 15 kilometers are pipe stream. So the people of Cologne cannot see that we have smaller streams close to the River Rhine, but mostly you cannot see them because they are piped. then this is new since 2 years. We are responsible for the ponds in the parks. So we have 15 ponds in Cologne, and they have different deep. And so for that, this is our problems that we have a good water quality during heat summer and so. Here you see the difference between flood on a large river or these heavy rainfall or some else says urban storm waters or what else. We from the flood protection, we are responsible only for the flood in the River Rhine. And these is a duty from colleagues of me at the Steb Köln. So the difference is that we look for the weather in the catchment area. They have a long rain period of time. And we know that there will come a flood. I cannot say if a flood coming in 1 month, but I can say not in the next 2 weeks. And we have enough time to know where we can build up our flood protection. We know all these area there are at risk, and we have good maps and statistic when the flood will comes. For the heavy rainfall or the urban stormwater is that these are short and heavy rainfalls, and sometimes we have a big area like Paris. And if sometime on the left side is raining, this not mean that on the right side of the river is the same rain. Short time. And so the risk areas are mainly at hillsides or where we have a low ground, and everyone are responsible for the protection. And this is different to do what we are doing along the river banks. In my presentation, I will talk only about the flood in a large river. So the flood protection, what we are doing along the river banks on the River Rhine, this work, it's good, and we hope and we try to prevent the catastrophic. So we have a good new flood protection, we have new flood protection level, and so we hope that it will everything work fine, and then we don't have a catastrophe. We are not a civil protection authority. We are expert in water management. So this is really different. And in Germany, it's that every tasks are from the water, environmental are more in the departments and Ministry for Environmental, and all the authority for the catastrophe, they are in another department. Then we have this great big adventures with the flood in a large river, that we have time. So I know that the water needs from the upper region around Karlsruhe to Cologne 2 days. So we know when there's a high water level, this water comes to us. From the big river Moselle, the water needs from Trier around 38 hours. So we have enough time to look what's happened, and that we have enough time to build our mobile wall system. And we have an action plan, so everyone knows what they have to do depending on the water level. So this is not that we know, okay, now we have 7 meters, we have to build everything. So it's really different, depends on centimeter steps. So the people know what they have to do at 7 meters, at 7 meter 20 or 70 meter 50. It's depend on the measures. You see a map of Germany, and we are here in Cologne, and it's nice to have rain during a flood event. Then the people in Cologne are thinking, oh yes, it's raining. This is the reason that we have a flood in the River Rhine. No, the flood in the River Rhine is that we have rain in this area. So this is a big area from the Mosel, this is the upper Rhine area in Switzerland. And in 2030, we are really glad that the first weather forecast was that the rain had to go over Switzerland, and the upper region of the River Rhine goes to the east part, and then the weather decided goes over Austria, Bavaria, to the east part of Germany, so that we have not so a big flood in 2013. And here you see two pictures from these disaster floods in 1993 and 1995. So our protection level was only 10 meters. And here you see the old town, this is the big cathedral, the Kölner Dom, and the main station. And normally between these two events should be 50 years, not 13 months. And if we have only this event, then the people were thinking, okay, now we have a big flood event. Now we have 50 years times to prepare and make new preparation and prevention and protection. But then this was really luck, but not for the people that are living close to the riverbank. We get in 13 months the next big flood event. And then there was a change thinking by the people, by the politicians, that they have to change something, and we need new protection, and we need new prevention by all the people in Cologne. And for that, my colleagues wrote a flood protection concept. And the politicians from Cologne said, oh, this is a really good concept, and you have to do everything what's standing there. So they say that the basic of the flood problems is not close to the city of Cologne. You have to look in the upper region, and we have to work together with all the other inhabitants around this river catchment area. Then we need a better and new prevention flood protection, but structural flood protection too. The flood management should be better. And then we need more danger prevention and disaster control. And this is important, and that we have to talk to the people, and with public relation means not only the inhabitants, the citizens of the city Cologne. This means my colleagues in my company, the department, the colleagues of the city of Cologne, and the politicians, because everyone have another problems. We don't have enough time, money, what else? So you have to repeat every day, we need flood protection. But I cannot say, and my colleagues too, when will the next flood coming, and how is the level of the water level during the next flood. During the thinking of new flood protection level, you have to show to the authority how many people are affected in the city of Cologne at the different water level, and what are the damage without and with the flood protection. And there's a really big difference. And so for that, they say, okay, now you get money to change the flood protection, and please build new flood protection. And for that, we built 28 kilometers new flood protection and 27 reunion. We have this 2 retention area in Cologne. We have a big new underground flood protection for the sewage system. We improved the flood management, and the total cost only for the city of Cologne was 430 million euros. Around 200 million for the underground flood protection and 230 for the surface flood protection. Now we have new flood protection level around this 1130. This is 1 times in 100 years, and 1119. This is 1 times in 200 years. So now we have over 10 kilometers mobile walls along the river, and for that we need 9 storage areas, and we have this 2 retention area with 35 million square meters. And here you can see some flood protection valves where we close the sewage system, and these are in a pumping station for the underground flood protection. So we do everything for the flood protection. For the technical flood protection, we make the water level forecast, we coordinate and moderating the flood stakeholders. But we need a lot of departments of the city of Cologne, and we need another stakeholders. But it's really that everyone knows what they have to do at the different water level. This is an example from our flood notes. So we send, when we say there's a flood coming, we send what is the water level at different time step, and it will increase or decrease the next day. And if we are really, if we know what is the maximum water level, we will write this to all the stakeholders doing our flood protection. This is RAVAS, this is a risk analyzer water tool. And here you find flooding maps and all the inhabitants, important buildings, schools, companies. And then you can see at different level when our protection line will fall, what's happened, who is affected or not for your planning before a flood is coming or during a flood. And for the public relation, we have our web pages. You will find the forecast and information for the public and media and the water level. And this, I think, is a really good and important tool that we have this flood risk maps. Since 2004, we have this in the internet without any German or European law or directive. So we thought that it's a good instrument to inform the people. And since 2013, you will find these flooding maps or this flood risk map in the entire European Union. And then these are normal work for us, what we are doing that the people don't forget flood. And in the big river, we have flyers and brochure, we make guiding tours, we have events, but mostly we combinate this with other organizations because the people goes more to a climate day in the zoo than only to a flood presentation. We consulting the city of Cologne industry and citizens. We using the German warning app Nina over our fire brigade, loudspeakers, and we have sceneries. And but they are used by the fire brigade. Thank you very much for your attention, and I hope that you have a lot of questions. And yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Marlene WILLKOMM. As I mentioned before, maybe the best solution for us would be to hear first Régis, and then to compare both presentations, allowing us to have some questions arisen from the comparison, maybe, if I may suggest so. So if you don't mind, I would like first to also to thank very warmly other people attending, especially Alexander Fekete, of course, he's not very far from Köln, because, well, he's German, and Annabelle Moati as well, among other people attending the meeting. Many thanks for that, and once again, your questions are most welcome. But first of all, I would like to leave the floor to Régis, because the idea is to have both presentations compared. So, Régis, now it's for you to present the Parisian case.
Do you see my presentation?
I think it's all right, yes.
Yes.
As for me, in case there would be any problem arising, please mention it while using the chat, and we will see what we can do in order to have the problem fixed. Thanks a lot.
Okay, so thank you, Patrick. So I would like first to thank the DKKV and AFPCN to have selected me for this first German-French webinar, and I hope there'll be others, of course, and on many other issues, for instance, on research and so on. And the idea was to first exchange between local practitioners. So the presentation of Marlene was really very impressive, and I learned a lot just listening carefully to her. And also I tried to use exactly the same summary than Marlene. So it looks like Marlene's presentation in some way. So I'm just going to say a few words just to say why it's so important for Paris flood risk. To also give you some figures about Seine River Basin. Also, maybe to insist on one point, because it's so much different between Germany and France. It's the governance in the French system, and especially in Paris region. And also what's happening in Paris in the fourth part. And mainly, I should say, with the help of the European Union directive. So Marlene said a few words about this directive at the end of her speech, but maybe I'm just going to develop some issues about that, and also to tell you what is in progress for a resident city in Paris. And the last part should be, as we decided with the organizers, to focus a little about the question of public awareness. So let's go, and I'm going to try to keep in 15 minutes, or I should say less now. So flood risk in Paris region is a major one. I should say it's quite really the major in France, inside Europe, because you have also some very big issues overseas. I should say, for instance, the volcanic eruption or an earthquake in some islands in Outre-mer, as we say in France. But it's staying in the agenda, the French agenda, it's the most important risk. And just to prove that, we asked 7 years ago an important review to OECD, and you can find it, you can load it, and I just give you the information at the end of my presentation, and it gives all the information, you know, about this event. And we can say that it should cost a lot of money, you know, but now with COVID-19, it seems not so much, I should say, but when we just gave this report, it seemed a lot of money, but it's still 30 billions of euros for direct damages. You can also affect up to 5 million of people. So imagine it's a lot of people. And of course, remind also that Paris, of course, is the capital of France. And a very important point also is the fact that the last big flood occurred more than a century ago. And it's very, very important when you are managing this event, when you are managing flood prevention. Of course, in back office, you have all the time this information, and it's very, very important. And just last but not least, you have also climate change issues. I should say, what the specialists are telling us, in fact, for river floods, and especially Seine River floodings, it's not such an important issue. It's probably also an issue for more frequent and extreme urban storms, and Marlene said a few words about this issue. So, j'ai un point, je peux passer. Okay. And so, just a few images. I said the most important, and especially in Paris, what is very, very important for the assessment of damages is the cascading effects, you know, between the different networks, especially electricity, of course. But for instance, you have many pumping stations, because you'll see we have a very, very important underground water flooding. And if the pumping stations are operating well, it's okay. But if after a few days you don't have any more electricity, that'll be a very, very important problem. There are also problems with transport system, sewage system, and so on and so on. And one of the main issues for this kind of city is really the cascading effect. So I told you just an image of the last big flood in Paris more than 1 century ago. It's like romantic photo, you know, but it should be really very, very huge problem if it was occurring again. And you can see here, because maybe you have heard of last floods in Paris region in 2016, 2018. There were 2 floods, and in the medias, even in the international medias, it looked like very important floods. In fact, there were small floods compared to the big one, you know, more than 1 century ago. You can see on the figure that it was, in fact, two meters below what happened 1 century ago. So you can imagine what should happen if it was occurring again. There's also a brief view of the situation of Paris in the center of the basin. So in some way, with the sea just to be in upper position, it's maybe an opportunity, but for flooding, it's not so nice because you have many rivers just arriving in the center of the basin, and Paris is just located in the center of this basin. So you can see also that the water flows are not very important. It's an average flow, but as many buildings were built along the river inside Paris, it's becoming a big issue. So, and you can see it. You can see the density of the city just in the center of the river basin, with more than 10 million inhabitants concentrated in that region. And just a view. It was not easy, but when I read first the Marlene PPT, and when she said, so my organization is doing that, and that, I said, wow, they're doing quite the main actions during a flood, you know. And in France, it's much more complicated, you know. And I'm not going to spend many minutes about this, but you must know that people, the stakeholders, just coming from the national level, from the regional level, from the local level, from the basin level. And happily, all that stakeholders are more and more coordinating and more working together, and especially with the help of European Union Flood Directive. And you can have some information if you want in English on some issues. And I gave you the links, you know. But you must also know that an Algerian colleague just asked just before, how is it happening in France when floods are occurring? We have a very well developed, you know, system for forecasting called the VigiCrew, and all the people in France just can get the information on real time, you know, if they want to know what's happening. We have clearly a local governance problem because we have local authorities, you know, Ville de Paris, département surrounding Paris, Métropole du Grand Paris. And this is going probably to change because there are new works done by different levels, and they must coordinate all the time. But in some way, and I can say it at the end, to have many stakeholders, it's not so bad to develop public awareness, because if it's too much centralized, maybe it's also a problem. Maybe we can have a discussion about this after. And just to give you one example, probably you know that in the world, most of the time, you have people in charge of crisis management and people in charge of prevention. And in Paris, with the help of the Flood Directive and the ECDP review, we have a special organization where the two levels, the national levels, they are really closely working together. And it's really very efficient, in fact. And so it gives also all the standards, you know, the framework to all the local authorities, a kind of umbrella, you know, and it's really very efficient, and it's probably a good model. And this model is not existing everywhere in France. It's not also existing in many countries. With the help also with Flood Directive, you know probably that now we must develop a flooding strategy, and now we have a flooding strategy in Paris region. I've seen that Anne-Marie Levrault was just attending this webinar. I remember when I saw her 10 years ago. I asked Anne-Marie, because she was at the head of the national service in charge of this question, is there a strategy for flood management in Paris? She told me, no, there is no strategy. Now there is a strategy. There was much progress made. Of course, we have also a program of actions called PAPI in France. And also want to insist on one point, I shall say it at the end also. We have many exercises, and especially an European Union exercise called Sequana. And this exercise was just organized 3 months before the flood, you know, the last flood, the 2016 flood. We were very lucky, but it was very efficient. And so it gave a good opportunity to all the stakeholders, public and private stakeholders, to know each other and to work together when the flood arrived. And of course, the last floods, 2016 and 2018, I told you they were low-level floods, in fact, but they, of course, have increased public and politicians' awareness. So what's going to be done, and what has been done in Paris region since a recent period? So many buildings, you remember the picture, have been built in flood-prone areas, and many networks underground. And now it's very difficult to protect between strokes them against floodings. We have reservoirs, local protection, pumping stations, we have preparedness measures, land use planning. In some way, we are inspired by the Dutch model, Room for the River. Of course, you probably know that this model. We are also developing more integrated actions adapted to climate change. And the purpose, main issue is probably to go towards a more resilient city. And many measures have already been implemented, but work is still in progress. Just some examples, some images, you know. Paris 1 century ago, the last big flood on the left. Paris today. So there were maybe 2 million inhabitants in the region 1 century ago, now more than 10 million inhabitants. This image on the left part is very important. It explains the main problems in Paris. The center of the city, you have many networks at many levels, you know. And if floods is arriving, river flooding is arriving, you have underwater coming at different levels. And if the pumping stations are not operating, it may be a very big issue. And even with pumping stations, you have big issues, for instance, for transport system and so on. On the right, just an example, it's the Ministère des Finances, Minister of Finance, you know, Paris-Bercy, where they collect the money of the people from all the France, you know, you can see what may happen if there was a big flooding. And it's just an example. You have many ministers, you know, hospitals and so on and so on. And also a big difference with Cologne, you know, the protection level is at a very low level in Paris, because the last flood in June 2016 causes damages of more than 1 billion euros. Just in fact showing that the OECD report was a good one, you know, because the OECD report told us that we can have 10,000, 20,000, 20 or 30 billions of euros of damages, and it showed that probably 100-year Seine River flood protection is unreachable in Paris. And in fact, the short-term conclusion for practitioners is that you must live with flooding, and the priority probably to avoid human casualties, reduce economic losses, increase city resilience, and the storage capacity if you can. As you know, probably that in France and Europe, it's very difficult to build new storage system. Here, just an image of the existing system. We have 4 big lakes just upstream of Paris for protection and drought management. You can see it's a beautiful place. It's not very well known by the people from Paris. It's in the Champagne region, you know, it's near Troyes, France, and so on. And a new reservoir is planned for flood protection. There's a new phase developed, and probably we have a small new storage reservoir ready for the Olympic Games, if the Olympic Games still occur in 2024. You have also local protection, as in Cologne. Another problem is that the level of this protection is not the same in the center part of Paris and in the upper part of Paris. You can see here the difference. You have also removable flood protections that were experimented, tested, and for instance, on the right, it was during the Sequana exercise. You get also removable flood protection for transformer system, protection of subway entrance. So many actions are developed by many stakeholders. And you have also preparedness measures. I'm just going to give you some information. Room for the River, I told you, and more integrated action toward the resident city. Just going to show you some examples. So these are, because I know the question that Patrick is going to ask me, and after, so it's the first answer to Patrick's question. For this kind of exercise is very important to increase public awareness. European exercise organized by Prefecture de Police with local authorities. It's for the people, for the young people, for the pupils, and so on. It's in a kind of funny games, funny organization. Room for the River. So I told you the Dutch spirit in some way. So we are beginning, but it's low level for the moment, but it's increasing to develop a new relation between the river and the city. And for instance, you have a new way of thinking the relation between river and the city in Haute-Seine. It's downstream Paris, or in Val-de-Marne. It's a new district just being developed. It's the first one being developed in that way in the Paris region. It's called Les Ardoines. And so now, what can we say probably for the future? For the future is, of course, we are flood management practitioners, but flood management is a part of integrated river basin management, and probably we'll have more drought than more flood, and so we must integrate flood and drought management, and with a new way of managing all the river basin. And we must also develop new solidarities between urban and rural areas, and especially upstream. And we must also tackle with the resilience of critical infrastructures to be able to reduce economic losses. And of course, also to develop public awareness. So public awareness, it's so difficult, you know, in a city like Paris, like 10 million inhabitants, I told you, or the people are changing very, very often. People coming from abroad, people coming from other parts of France are leaving, and so on and so on. So how can we increase the public awareness of that people, you know? I should say that it's a long-lasting process. It's never ending, you know, it's never ending. And probably as more as you have stakeholders, the best it is, because in fact, you must just define precise message for precise population. You are not speaking of floodings in the same way to a taxi driver, you know, or to a waiter in a cafe or a restaurant. You must adapt the way we speak to them. And so we have new system, we have nice platform. You can just see it. It's open to everybody, AFPCN. You have also very nice videos, 3D videos developed by an institution in Paris, a famous institution in Paris called Paris Region. There are tools, but they are probably not enough just to make the people to really live with the flooding, you know. So it was probably the last one. Yes, thank you for your attention. So if you want to know more about this situation in Paris, just really give you the advice to read this report, the OECD report. You can have it in English, in French, and you can have a summary. You can have also, you have a new edition just assessing the progress. It's really a very interesting one, and also give you the advice to try to have some information about the European Union exercise called Sequana. Unfortunately, I not found information in English, but I'm sure that you can find information in English about this exercise. So thank you very much for your attention. As Marlene, I'm of course be ready to have some questions.
Many thanks, Régis, for your presentation. As everybody can see, the presentations were very close. And of course, it's a big advantage for us because it eases a lot the comparison between Paris and Cologne, and also the kind of questions that may be asked. Meanwhile, we had a lot of questions that arose on the chat. And as I mentioned later, of course, they were not asked for nothing, because they will be addressed maybe now, maybe later. I would like first also to, keep in mind the questions we decided to ask in close collaboration between Régis and Marlene, of course. Those questions are three of them, you see. What to do in order to increase the empowerment of citizens and local stakeholders in the face of such a situation, the relevance of prevention, the relevance of structural measures, of course, and also the limitations such measures are bound to meet. And this is very plain when we compare the German presentation with the French presentation. First question. Second question, how participative governance is being promoted and implemented in Cologne and in Paris. And the third one, what to do in order to share such, so to say, good practices, because perfect practice doesn't exist, as everybody knows. But the main idea is to reduce losses and to increase awareness in order to prevent much more disasters than what is the case today. So I leave the floor once again to first Marlene and Régis in order to address those issues. And afterwards, I dare to propose that, everybody attending can ask questions to Régis and Marlene, of course.
Yeah, thank you. This it's really important to have a good connection to the stakeholder and the citizens without floods, because then you have time, the atmosphere is nice. So for that we have a lot of working groups, and so that everyone knows each other. This is really important if you are doing a flood together, and then it's easier to give them a telephone call and so on. And then Cologne is in the in German Hochwassernotgemeinschaft Rhein. There are every cities from Mainz to the border of the Netherlands, and this we are together. And for that, on the web page we have this big the best practice, and we talk to each other what we are doing. And with this Hochwassernotgemeinschaft Rhein, this is like an NGO, and for that we work with the International Commission of the Protection of the River Rhine together. And the last one is that you now I lost the thing, that it's important to show to the people that we are all in one boat, that we have to work together. And it's good that we have this good technical flood protection, but this is more that we need prevention. So the water level will increase higher. At the moment, the models for the climate change are really difficult. So someone says it will increase in the winter time, the flood events. So our flood time is more in winter than in the summer times. On the other side, I saw last week a presentation. He said for Germany it's really difficult to say, because we are in an area where a lot of models came together. So it's clearer to say, or better to say, for the south part of Europe or for the north part, and not in the middle part. And so I think that I have some say to all your question, Patrick. So
Yes. Thank you, Marlene. Of course, the main idea is on governance and how to imply much more local stakeholders in risk prevention. Of course, you made that point very clearly during your presentation, especially with the slide that considers the necessity of having prevention measures, and at the very same time, the necessity to admit that they are bound to find limitations, and what to do with that gap you see in between. This is, of course, one of the main issues that are being addressed by World Bank, World Economic Forum, and in various arenas as well. So it's nothing new. But the main challenge is to see what can be done more effectively in that way, and what could be the incentives toward having people more working in flood risk prevention. Because as we all know, while preventing floods, it's not a question for flood prevention only. There are various issues that should be addressed as well. And one of the main challenges is also with this issue, multi-risk analysis.
Yeah.
So, all right, Marlene, many thanks for that. But of course, it's very, very important to share experiences with Régis in that case. And once again, many thanks for the presentation that were very close, but that deliver the same big message, the necessity to do something more, and while giving more power, if I may say so, to local stakeholders, to citizens, in spite of the very big difficulties we have in this. Régis, would you like to?
Yes, thank you, Patrick. I see that we maybe have only 12 minutes, so very shortly, maybe I can summarize some ideas, and already said some words about it. First, it's very, very difficult to involve stakeholders and to make prevention when the last big event occurred more than 1 century ago. It's very, very difficult. Just an example. When you have a big flooding anywhere in France or in Europe, and you have a good idea of what the people are thinking, the people in the street, when you look at the TV, the TV, what are they asking? Oh, wow, many, many damages. And 2 or 3 days after, the government, whatever the government is just coming and say, don't care, you'll have the insurance money, the CatNat system money very soon, and that's over, you know. And nobody is just dealing with prevention and what should be done. And so maybe during a few days, you know, but it's over. And so how can we try to have some better reactions? So in some way, what, you know, UNDR is telling us, a Sendai framework, you know, build back better or build before better. How can we achieve that, you know? And I should say maybe one idea should be to develop common exercises. I just spoke about the Sequana exercise. It's a really nice one with some European countries, with national levels, some local levels, private partners, and so on. So if we can develop this kind of exercise, it should be nice. For instance, in Paris region, cannot we imagine to have an exercise with Paris City, with Métropole du Grand Paris, with Préfecture de Paris, Préfecture de Police, with AFPCN, some NGO, and so on, a big one, you know, big exercise, you know. And so it looks like reality for the people. Maybe we can begin to change, you know, some minds, and for this kind of issue, you know, for the priority given to prevention. Because otherwise it's not changing. I don't believe in revolution, you know, I believe in evolution, and I believe also of the help of European exchanges. And the flood directive for me is an opportunity, you know, because it just work, in France especially, work more with stakeholders. And so maybe we just must make it, you know, because when I gave in my presentation some positive information, it's really the beginning, you know, we can go much further. And probably the exercise is a good way to begin to change the behaviors, because the main issue is to change the behaviors, how to change the behaviors of the people, of the politicians, you know. Because at this moment, if you read the OECD report about flood prevention in Paris, you say, it's unbelievable, you know. But who at the government just say no? So now we have the report, let's just act. Nobody, you know, because it's not a priority for the people. It's not the first question at the agenda. But also we are completely focused on flood prevention. There are so many issues, you know, in the life of people. So, but maybe regular exercise with all the stakeholders may be a first step, just to begin to really sensibilize people, you know.
Okay, many thanks, Régis, for this. Now, maybe I would like to offer the opportunity to attendance from the United States, Japan in particular, Austria, and of course, other participants from far countries to ask some questions in case who would like to do it, maybe because they suffer from time discrepancies, if I may say so, not necessarily time lag, of course, for them, but it could be a good opportunity to benefit from their experience on this. So in case you would like to ask questions, please, can you do it right now? Otherwise, I would like to also pick some ideas coming from, the chat and from anyone else, in case you would like to ask questions, of course.
I have a question that wasn't very clear to me, is the system of financing these works, and how is it paid for at the different levels of government? And is this one-time financing, or is this continual financing for improvement of the prevention systems?
Mm-hmm. Should I start in Cologne? So in Germany there are different ways and steps. So my favorite state is North Rhine-Westphalia, and you have to protect up to a 100-year flood. So if we have a flood protection that's lower than 100 years, you don't get any money from the country. If this higher, then you get 60% for the investor cost, also for the structural cost. My work and that for my colleagues, they build this borewell system or do the work in the underground flood protection. This is paid by the city of Cologne over normal text, or everything what we are doing in the underground is paid by the wastewater text. And I showed you 2 retention area. one is finished, so we built this area, and the second, we are at the moment at the plan approval process. And after the big flood events in 2013, the federal state decided, or the Federal Republic decided, that this is so an important thing. So this will financed by the Federal Republic. So we have this different. The main money comes from the federal state, but sometimes you get money from the Federal Republic, and the most is paid by the normal text.
Thank you.
Okay. Would you like someone else to ask a question? Maybe Norio Kada or Alexander Feteke? Of course, it's not a constraint for you. I would just like to offer the possibility, because I have to manage the session and you are far away from us.
Thank you very much. This is Nori Okada. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, of course, pretty well.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. Just one question. But either of the two towns, Cologne or Paris, do you, for instance, work together with subway companies or subway city administration people? At least in Japan, for instance, Kyoto, there is an increasing risk of flooding into the subway spaces, rural countries. And in this case, we also have academics work together with them and to organize some participatory type of thing. But also we need to do some simulation kinds of modeling activities. So do you have that kind of activity involving stakeholders like the subway people or underground people? And also maybe you may also need some help from academics. Thank you.
So in Cologne, the metro, the subway is not private. So the owner of the station are the city of Cologne, and they are doing the metro is a daughter company of the city of Cologne, and both both departments are working close together with us. And normally, if our protection line high enough and everything is fine, so they don't get problem from the river water. But we have in Cologne another problem: the groundwater will increase. So they had in 2009 they make groundwater flooding maps to look which underground or metro subway it's have problem with groundwater over there. But they know this, and they have changed some building to protect the subway for the groundwater problem, and maybe our flood protection is not failed, and then they have for that second protection.
Just a word for Paris. In Paris, it's the same. It's a public company called RATP, and this company is very, very much involved in flood protection and prevention. Maybe you remember I showed you a photo of the entrance of a subway station. They were just making works to increase the level of the entrance, to protect against flooding. But in fact, maybe you remember what I told you. The main problem in Paris is the underground flooding. And in fact, you must understand that the city of Paris, in fact, it's partly, not totally, but partly swamps that were built. Very famous place in Paris called Le Marais. It means what it means, swamp. You have all rivers, the ancient beds, where now you have boulevards and so on. So when there is flooding, water is coming everywhere, And the RATP company, they know perfectly well that if a big flooding was occurring, it should be a disaster for the subway system. Even if they are pumping and so on, and probably it takes several months or 7 years just to to build back better, you know, the system, the transport system in Paris. And if some of you are interested, in fact, my institution called EPTB Seine 3 years ago just ordered research on the flood prevention, and we have a new study and can give you the information. Unfortunately, it is a part in French, a part in English, and it's very interesting because it tried to modelize how the underground flooding was occurring, the time between the flood and the fact that you can have a building inundated and so on and so on. And there are many new actions to develop, you know, based on that study. But it's a main, from my point of view, it's a main issue, you know, and especially towards people, because you can have a city totally stopped, you don't see the water. The water is under you, you know. And so, but you don't have no more internet, no more subway system, and so on and so on. And so, you understand, for the politicians, it should be very, very difficult to manage this kind of situation. You know, the city stopped without water under your feet. You know, so it's a big problem.
So thank you a lot, Régis, Marlene, of course, Nolio. And also I see that Alexander is, well, on the screen right now. Hello, Alexander, nice to see you here, because, well, we are near the end of the meeting, as you may know, because it's 2 p.m. right now. So I would like to, well, present a wrap up of the meeting, but I don't think we could have time enough. So I would offer to write it down and to send it to you later. But you see, the main idea are, well, pretty well met, I think, because it runs along behavior, working together, governance. Those issues were addressed at numerous times during the past. Here I have a book I mentioned a moment ago, you see. Maybe the cover, well, I don't know if it works pretty well, you see. Daniel Kahneman, and Daniel Kahneman works on, well, studies that Slovak made, and other colleagues opposing him, on what to do between the experts and between the local stakeholders, what to do with all these tensions that are deeply embedded in the issues related with disaster prevention. So what I propose, depending on the content of this meeting, is to follow the adventure and to move away. For example, employing German colleagues, other colleagues as well from the United States, from Japan, Austria as well, and to see what we can do with those issues while working on it a bit more, even though, as I mentioned, there are always there has been a lot of things already made on this, especially by European funded programs such as No4DRR, for example. Roland knows it pretty well, and so on. So now it's time to leave, I think so. I'm sorry for the poor time I have for delivering a fine wrap-up for this webinar, but once again, I would like to thank you very much for attending this meeting. For some of us, it has been a challenge because of time, of conditions, and so on. And I would like to have the opportunity to work again with you very soon on this. Once again, many thanks to Marlene, who made prominent work on this, and also for Régis, and also for Roland, because Roland managed the whole webinar while not counting the energy given to it. And a last message is maybe also for Samuel Ruffat, who asked a very interesting question, but very unfortunately, we don't have time enough for addressing it now. But it's not, well, it has not been asked for nothing, as I mentioned a moment before. So nice to have worked with you. And
thank you to you, Patrick. You made a fantastic job, you know, really, for the preparation. I don't know if the people, they realize the preparation you made, you know. Thank you.
You are very kind for this, but you see, I made it for the general good, if I may say so. I have nothing in mind but to help.
Thank you.
And
Thank you, Alex.
these issues are very, very interesting.
Very much.
So now, as I mentioned also, every question will be addressed later. So don't worry about that, as all webinars are very frustrating exercises, very interesting and very frustrating as well, as is always the case with more conventional presentations. It's always the same story. So I say you goodbye and thanks again for attending, and see you very soon, and especially Alexander.
Bye.
Bye.